Vanakkam, Namaskara, you are with the South Indian. Today, of course, after doing a couple of stories, we shall also bring you a very super special story on the superstar Rajinikanth, but for that, you would have to wait. But first up, this is a story which broke many people's hearts and actually drove terror in the hearts of people of Bengaluru. I'll tell you what it is. It was a usual weekend in Begur, located on the Hosur-Bengaluru highway in Karnataka. Little did a couple in a flat in Micro layout know that their lives were to change for the worst. The two young people, partners for over 2 years, had a major fight, and suddenly the man bludgeoned the woman with a pressure cooker, hitting her repeatedly until she collapsed in a heap on the floor in a pool of blood. She was dead after a few moments. The woman was all of 24 years old and was from Tirunelveli in Kerala. The alleged murderer was also of the same age and hailed from Kollam in Kerala. Their names, Deva and Vaishnav, who were partners and were in a live-in relationship and had been living together for the past 2 years in a rented flat in Begur's Micro layout. The two had known each other since college and later moved to Bengaluru as partners and even worked in the same sector of sales and marketing. So, like many people are speculating, it wasn't as if Deva and Vaishnav had just met, and like many are again saying on social media platforms, on an impulse decided to start living together. But you know what? Like many good things, their relationship started souring. According to neighbours, they would often have loud slanging matches, but neither of them ever went to the police to make a formal complaint. Vaishnav, the alleged murderer, the man in the relationship, was actually consumed with suspicion. That is what everyone is saying. Who's everyone? Witnesses, neighbours. He suspected that Deva was cheating on him, and this was the reason they had a huge argument almost every day. As their relationship worsened, Deva's sister Krishna decided to mediate and called the two over to her home on Saturday, that is the 26th of August, just now. It seemed as if Deva and Vaishnav had reached reconciliation and both of them returned home. However, upon returning home, the couple resumed arguing, and the fight reached to such a level that Vaishnav allegedly lost his cool and struck Deva's head multiple times with a pressure cooker, resulting in her death. Now Krishna, that is Deva's sister, who had tried a reconciliation between the two, called the couple at around 4 p.m. on Sunday, but became very suspicious as neither of them answered her calls. She then decided to go to their flat. She came there and found her sister Deva's body. After committing the crime, Vaishnav absconded, but was later nabbed by the police. Let's listen in to what DCP South Bengaluru, C.K. Baba, had to say about the case.
ನ್ಯೂ ಮೈಕೋ ಲೇಔಟ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಜಾಗ ಇದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕಪಲ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಲಿವ್ ಇನ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ನರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಮಹಿಳೆ ಮತ್ತು ಪುರುಷ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಒಂದು 2 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕೂಡ ಕೇರಳ ಮೂಲದವರು. ಒಬ್ಬರು ಕೊಲ್ಲಂ ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರು ತಿರುವನಂತಪುರಂ ಏರಿಯಾದವರು. ಇಬ್ಬರು ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹೀಗಾಗಿ ಇರಬೇಕಾದಾಗ ಅವರು ಸೇಲ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟಿಂಗ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಕೋರಮಂಗಲ ಮತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕ್ಕಪಕ್ಕ ಏರಿಯಾಗಳಲ್ಲಿ. ಪರಿಚಿತರು ಭಾಳ ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಅವ್ರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಇವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಆ ರೀತಿ ಅವರ ಲೈಫನ್ನು ನಡೀತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ದಿವಸಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಈ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಸ್ಪಿಷಿಯಸ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರ ಈ ಮಹಿಳೆಯ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ಈ ಟೈಪ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ಅಂತ ಆ ಸಸ್ಪಿಷಿಯಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಜಗಳಗಳು ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಸೊ ನಿನ್ನೆನೂ ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಇದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಒಂದು ಜಗಳ ಆದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನು ಅಡುಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕುಕ್ಕರ್, ಪ್ರೆಷರ್ ಕುಕ್ಕರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನು ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆಕೆಗೆ ತಲೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೊಡೆದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನು ಡೆತ್ ಆಗಿರೋದು ನಮಗೆ ತಿಳಿದು ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಆ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ನಾವು ಒಂದು 302 ಕೇಸ್ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ.
In this unfortunate incident, there are several questions which need to be raised. What is with the extreme violence displayed by the alleged murderer? You remember, the gruesome murder of Shraddha Walker, in which her lover chopped her into tiny pieces and threw away her body parts in a park so casually. They were of course living together. Or the murder of 23-year-old Krishna Kumari, who died after her partner Santosh Dhami, who was all of 26, allegedly smashed her head against a wall, once again in Bengaluru, over suspicion of multiple affairs. What are the rights of those in a live-in relationship? I'm not going to debate this today really. I think all of us have to sit and understand what has really gone wrong with those who are in a live-in relationship or in love, are partners, and what's gone wrong with the way they think or try to decode the other person's reluctance or any other reason for a breakup. Brinda Adige is joining me. She's a very well-known women's activist. G.A. Bava, retired DCP in Bengaluru, is joining us. Mimamsa Singh Tanwar, who is a clinical psychologist, Fortis Healthcare, and Rekha Agarwal, also joining us, advocate Supreme Court of India. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Brinda, shocking, really, you know, okay, so I'm going to say this, you know, I do a show called the South Indian, you know Brinda, I've only done shows around the South. We look at NCRB data, you know, I keep reading it about, we are doing better than the North. That does not mean that I'm gloating about it. We belong to one country. But this kind of bashing someone's head with a pressure cooker, Brinda, when you heard this news, what was your reaction?
Pained.
Yeah.
Because we are looking at live-in relationships, and the communities, the society and the family would also have to take that blame and responsibility. What was the arrogance, the impunity that made this man to use that pressure cooker to repeatedly hit his partner? Is it because he thought that nobody would care for her? Is it because he would be able to get away by saying that she's like this and she's like that, and that is why it was a crime of passion? Or is he really so blatantly aware that the justice system is not going to punish him strictly, nor will the justice system take this matter into consideration at the earliest as manslaughter? Because we have a justice system who continuously use phrases which are gendered, and I hope the Supreme Court is looking and listening to us. Crimes of passion is always allocated to this kind of a crime when a partner or a husband beats up his wife or the partner. And that said, we need to ask ourselves, what were the neighbors doing? Why did the family decide that they must patch up? Why did the family even think, the sister even think that this is something that could be patched up and everything would be hunky-dory? These stereotypical attitudes, behavior, and our constant compromising made by the woman is what has led to that death today.
Dhananjay has also joined us. I can see him on the screen, very, very well-known lawyer. I'll go to him in a bit, but before that, let's understand, like Brinda said, you know, what is with this violence? Mimamsa Singh Tanwar, you are a clinical psychologist. Whether it is this case where you imagine, just imagine, I tried imagining it, lifting a pressure cooker, you know, in itself takes an effort. Maybe he held it, I don't want to kind of, actually do a restructuring of the crime scene. I'm not a cop. But you know, I would even be scared to pick up a tiny pencil. I've never done this in my life. But to lift something, so much of anger, and to bang it on someone's head repeatedly, not once. So it's not like you hit once and you say, oh God, what did I do? You know that the person is not hurt enough to match your anger, and you keep hitting. Whether it is this case of Bengaluru that we are focusing on, Mimamsa, or whether it is the case of Shraddha Walker's case, or it is the case of a tribal girl in Jharkhand, whether it is the case, I mean, I can go on and on. These are extreme cases of violence. How do you decode it? Ms. Tanwar?
I think it's very important to understand that over here we are looking that there is an individual subjecting to an impulse reaction to the rage and the violence that they are experiencing at that point in time. The violence is an act, but the emotion that the individual at that point in time is experiencing is extreme rage. And in these individuals, you would also see that there is lack of remorse. You would also see that perhaps that sense of empathy to emotionally relate with someone may also be challenging. And like what we've been seeing when we are trying to understand a bit more about these individuals, that there is a history of aggression. There is a history of having this unhealthy way of expressing their anger. And if we try and understand that a bit more, it's not merely.
So you are someone who's trained. Am I right in decoding what you're saying, Mimamsa? That when you say that perhaps this person allegedly was aggressive, he was someone who would lose his cool unnecessarily. So once again it's conjecture, but I've seen a lot of abusive relationships. You tolerate it once, you say, you know, it happened in impulse, I'm so sorry, let's make up. Then whether it's a live-in relationship or a marriage or any kind of a partnership, I think somewhere because you're tolerating it time and again, it gives you the person, the violent person. I'm not saying, I'm not associating gender, but in this case obviously the man, Vaishnav, took the step because उसको आदत हो गई थी कि कोई सह रहा है इसको बार बार, और क्यों ना अब इस बार मतलब एक ही उसमें, because he was suspecting her of having cheated on him. I mean, I wonder why she stayed on, but she must have had some compulsions. Poor thing is no more with us, so I can't possibly, I won't like to conjecture. Let me come back to you, and meanwhile, ladies and gents, G.A. Baba, retired DCP of Bengaluru, has also joined us. But first, I'll go to Dhananjay. Dhananjay, social media is of course aghast. Poor thing was beaten repeatedly, pool of blood, cruelty, but they are all saying, well, it's a live-in relationship. What is the big deal? You're a lawyer and I wanted you, that's why on the show, and I called you that, you know, please join us. It is time that a lot of you who watch this show get your facts absolutely checked. I'm going to go to Dhananjay to ask exactly, although Dhananjay, a live-in relationship is not deemed to be legal, it's not recognized like a marriage is, like, you know, union between two people. I should add had heterosexual people as marriage, but it is legal, isn't it, Dhananjay? And in what circumstances can it be deemed to be legal?
Well, it is legal in the sense, there used to be cases 15, 20 years ago of police trying to prosecute people who live together. So in that context, courts 25, 30 years ago started saying that, look, there is nothing illegal about an arrangement like this. And after some time, they went on to say that there is no morality. And then the law evolved. Now, the law here is judge-made law only. Unfortunately, our lawmakers have not kept up with the times. So you do not find our laws explicitly recognizing this form of relationship. It's rather the courts. Every time there used to be a case before a court where a live-in relationship was involved, courts have done something or the other to protect the women concerned, mostly. And then also to protect the children that were born out of a live-in relationship. So all of the law that we today stand and see is the law that has come from judges. It's a court-made law. It's not really law made by the legislature. And that also tells us that the lawmakers have seemed to have a kind of disdain towards it. And in your introduction to this story, you were saying that many people, would also be commenting and saying that, well, she probably deserved it because she was in this immoral, illegal, illicit relationship and all of that. And to some extent, that section of the society, and I believe that's in fact the majority, that section of the society enables this form of violence. Because so long as we don't consider this, broadly, when society does not broadly accept these forms of relationships, that will also embolden, perpetrators to go and assault a woman, and in this case, to kill a woman. Now, the individual concerned probably might not have been able to do all of this if only a live-in relationship was accorded, the same legal recognition like a marriage does, because The question is, had he been married, had he tied a Mangala Sutra to her, would he have still done what he did to her? That's a question, and I think the person best suited to answer that is the victim himself. I'm sorry, not the victim, the perpetrator himself. But no one is going to go and talk to the perpetrator on this, so we'll have to make our assumptions. I think the law, because the law in this country does not completely accept these forms of relationships, though
Right.
there is some protection available in courts. All of these things occur, and unfortunately, we enable it. When I say we, I mean society enables
society,
it when
yes.
we refuse
Yeah.
to recognize.
Yeah.
When we refuse to recognize the reality of living relationships, it's time that we recognize the reality of living relationships and then say that, look, if you're in a living relationship, please be open about it and please stand up when
Yeah,
someone is
but then
abusing you. because
Dhananjay,
the one who-
Dhananjay, I'm sorry, I'm interjecting, but as a woman, let me tell you, even if he had tied a Mangal Sutra around her neck or tied a tali, he would have still done it. We have seen lots of cases. Marriage does not deter a man like this. But the point is, I'm going to come back to you because we have to understand the laws so far as domestic violence is concerned in a live-in relationship. We understand maintenance. We understand if a child is born out of such a union. But what about domestic violence? I mean, this has come up again and again. Meanwhile, let me go to Mr. Bawa. Mr. Bawa, thank you for joining us. Mr. Bawa, the thing is that if you read all the reports, it is very clear apparently the neighbors have said allegedly that they used to hear the couple, Vaishnav and Deva, who's now passed away, Vaishnav and she having loud arguments all the time, fighting away, right? So, the police has said that, of course, the body allegedly was discovered by the victim's sister Krishna, who came and found her body there. But I want to ask you that what happens to all this neighborhood watch, police patrolling, everything? Because what I have heard, and Brinda Adige will also kind of perhaps ratify this, that even if you hear a couple shouting, instead of saying it's their personal business, you need to knock on their door and say, what's going on? Mr. Bawa.
Yes, of course. What I heard is they were quarreling each other, and the neighboring were hearing the sounds and all. But police can't do anything because it may be a flat. So many flats are there. We can't keep watch on every house and everything what is going on there. But neighbors also got some responsibility. They would have at least informed to the police. If they would have come and inquired. If they inquired, they would have called them. They would have informed their parents, because marriage is different from living together. Marriage means there will be a father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law. So many people would have been there in the house. But in this living relationship, nobody will be there. They came from Kerala and living there. They're making galata there. If there's some complaints, some information is gone to police station, means they would have taken some preventive action. And they would have prevented this incident also.
Mr. Bawa, that galata that they created, the commotion that they created, sir, even a married couple can do. Not necessary that married couple need to have a mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law. There are nuclear families. The thing is about what the police needn't enter a flat and say, hey, what are you doing?
Definitely.
They can keep a watch. No, Mr. Bawa.
Yes, you think yourself. I am not supporting police or anything.
Okay, sir.
It is in, I think, in Michael, name is Begur police station.
Right.
There are thousands of flats are there, thousands of people coming there and coming from north, south, everywhere. They are coming there and staying there. They are doing their business. Maybe
right. Okay.
All parts of life. Yeah.
Right.
But it is very difficult to keep watch in every house.
Right.
I'm not defending the police.
Brinda is wanting to respond. Brinda, come in, Brinda. Say.
I have three things to share. First and foremost, we have to place on record, and I'm sure many would, Mr. Bawa would also agree with me, domestic violence cases of this nature are the least priority for the police, because they do not necessarily fall within the realms of law and order or crime, because crime has not yet been committed. The Domestic Violence Act is a remedial act. Let us see how to settle. Let's see how to counsel. Let us see how to keep the family together. A. B. We know our society is so patriarchal that they will not interfere even if a husband beats up, and if the mother-in-law and the father-in-law and the entire khandan is there, nobody interferes. And in a case of live-in relationship, even neighbors do not want to interfere. So even if the neighbors are going to make a complaint, how does this complaint get registered at 112, which is the emergency services?
Right.
I am asked to give my details. No, I want to be an anonymous reporter. I'm just a neighbor.
Right.
I don't want to get involved. So we need to ask ourselves, what are the structures and mechanisms that make it even more difficult to report or make a complaint?
All right. Mimamsa, I want to come to you. We hear, now the people, at least people who watching series and etc., they are very, very aware of terms like sociopath, psychopath, things like that. If you were given this case to kind of decode it for the general public, because the one thing that the girl's parents, friends, whoever must be grappling with is, my God, how can this guy have been so violent that you keep hitting her with a pressure cooker and kill her, The thing is that you were saying, when I last spoke to you, you said that there could have been some kind of suppressed aggression in him. But do you think that the woman, is it possible when you are trying to decode this case and retrace steps, as it were, that maybe the woman knew about all this, but she continued to live with him? Is there a possibility?
I think what we need to really understand is that in some of these relationships that we see, in which aggression is there to a very large extent, it's not just a single episode. This was just an episode in which the perpetrator went to the extent that he went, or many more such cases. But one needs to understand that what are the red flags of being with a partner who is abusive. Now, whether it is physical abuse, or even if it is the fact that there are these aggressive outbursts that continues to happen without any sensitivity to understand how it may be impacting the other person, still continuing to have that sense of control by getting into some kind of either a manipulative behavior where over apologizing and then saying would never get angry again, and yet continues to do that, or even to be able to understand that what the other person may be going through and tries to have control over the partner by acting in a certain way that again the partner has to go and apologize for something like this. As a psychologist, one would also look at the childhood history, because what we would see in the history is that there could be adverse childhood experiences. There could be also family violence that the perpetrator has been witness to. It could also be the fact that because there is that kind of an experience that one has had, the attachment style in itself is flawed. And even the fact that what one tends to see around, whether it is in the form of serials, media, whatever the violence, the desensitization and the normalization of violence can certainly lead to even extreme measures.
Oh yeah, I was only thinking
so
of
that is also,
Mimamsa, I was thinking of Kabir Singh, that film. I'm going to name it. I mean, I'm not scared of, that whole kind of toxic relationship where you're trying to prove he's a very nice guy, but sometimes he loses his cool. I've heard this all my life about men, that he threw the bat at you, but actually he's a very nice guy. Sometimes everyone loses their cool. Then they will also quote some gods and goddesses and great men and great women. So I think you're very right. It's about normalizing violence, to such an extent that lives are lost. Dhananjay, tell us about domestic violence and live-in relationships, Dhananjay. I think that the woman has a right in this, doesn't she?
Yes, we have this law, the domestic violence law, which in fact has a specific clause that says if somebody were to complain to the police or to the authorities about happening of domestic violence, but they were mistaken, they will still stand protected. We have had that because very often when somebody wants to complain, they are not quite sure of, what could be the future consequences. So we have such protection, and that protection means that if the police would encourage neighbors to come forward and complain, as Brunda Rege was pointing out, why would not, if we hypothetically ask this question in this case, why did not the neighbors really, tip the police or complain to the police? I think mostly it's because the neighbors must have felt that the police would rather, put neighbors into trouble by saying that, look, why are you bothered to complain to us when the victim herself, because apparently the way the police would look at things like this, like the victim in this case is a working woman. And the police is likely to say that, look, the complaining neighbor is a housewife. And then the victim apparently is a working woman. So why should we take from a housewife the alleged, victimization of a working woman? So, I think the police generally tends to think in this manner. So we have a very strong law in this country that protects women in a household against any form of assault or abuse. And it is not the victim alone that will have to complain to the police. Anyone unconnected with the victim who could just be a neighbor but who believes that the victim is being abused could always complain to the police. And I just have a suggestion, which is it's important to separate, in Karnataka, what we have is the crime police is different from the traffic police. And this distinction was not always there from the beginning. At a point of time, the government felt that for proper administration of traffic management, we will need to separate the crime police from the traffic police. Similarly, it's important to separate the regular crime police from police that should be allotted to the domestic violence cases, cases of victimization of women and children. We need a separate police department for that, because the current police is, which deals with robbers, which deals with thugs and all kinds of people, it simply does not have the sensitivity to deal with these class of cases, because these class of cases require a very different approach.
Dhananjay, also, quickly, because a lot of people are watching this show, young women or men, people who are stuck in a toxic relationship, particularly when they are living in together. Suppose I am living in with a man and, I do not want to. After suppose after 10 years I walk out of the relationship, will I get maintenance? What if I have left my job during this period and decided to only cook and look pretty for him?
Yes, maintenance is possible, is available. Courts have become more progressive in that regard. So you will have to go to a lawyer who is not just going to open up the statute book and say that, oh, hold on, the statute does not recognize the relationship. You will have to go to a lawyer who will in fact not stop with the statute book, but will read up the judgments and say that, wait, courts have in fact started recognizing this as a valid form of, living, and courts in fact have been providing maintenance. So maintenance is permissible. Now, on the other aspect, if someone is in a living relationship for 15 or 20 years and wants to separate, they could do that the very next morning. So that's nobody should have a feeling that they will have to issue a legal notice and say that they want to separate. No such thing. In a living relationship, you want to separate, you're free to separate. But nevertheless, the male will be under an obligation to pay maintenance to the women should the women move a court of law.
Wonderful, and this is very important information. Before I go to Mr. Bawa, who wants to say something on the matter, that instead of using disparaging words for such a women, particularly in the South, I mean, there are very disparaging words which I shall not repeat on national television. But it is very easy to say, oh, she came there to live with him of her own volition. What is wrong now? He doesn't want her. All that is now changed. Women, you will get maintenance after having spent 10 years of your life tending to this toxic creature. You will get. Yes, Mr. Bawa, you were saying something.
I heard all the conversation. It is, of course, it is a very pathetic and unfortunate incident. Such incidents should not have happened. But one thing I wanted to tell everybody and to the public also. So, to giving information to the police, there is nothing wrong. You need not disclose your identity also. Even law given protection, they will not reveal the names of any informants. When they heard, if they found some suspicion acts of anybody, they would have. Social media is very active. They would have informed the commissioner of police, local police about this. Then police should have informed that, because some number of laws are there in protection of women and child, and even domestic violence also, and any harassment from the husband or anybody. So it is there, and all laws are very favorable to ladies and child. So in that case, we must have some civic sense. Everybody have. But it is very easy to talk, but nobody will take responsibility. I know, I put up 38 years of service in police department. If people see some dead body also, they will hesitate to inform police. It should not be the tendency. You must inform police. You must very bold enough to inform without telling your name, without disclosing your identity. and every protection was there. Protections are there to informants also. So my kind request is, please inform to the police, and you inform, and afterwards, if they don't act, the responsibility comes on police, and you can take action on local police who are not taken action. So it is my request in this time, this one, everybody, don't,
sir.
because when they avoided, because everybody neighboring, they were hearing hue and cry every day, they would at least send some information to the local police.
All
would have
right.
helped to save the life.
Right. Brinda, I want to come to you. You see, the society has undergone change, and it's both for the good and the bad. But, what really shocks me is that if 15 years ago, if such a relationship had been totally unacceptable, no one will give you a house. Even now, they don't give you a house if you're not married, and if there was complete social stigma, which of course still exists. But the point is that if you and I feel happy that the women are are experimenting, have more freedom to do, how does one explain such a case, Brinda? This is extreme violence, I say. This is of the dark ages. How does, there is a dichotomy in this, that a man who holds my hand and says, come, we will live together. It's not important for us to be married. He is the one who hits me on the head repeatedly with a pressure cooker. How do we explain this?
I think we will continue to grapple with that particular question that you asked in the end, Sudha, for many years to come. But to begin with, when you started off, you talked about this man who promises to love the other woman, says that, marriage just being a ritual or a ceremony is not required for us because we are in love and we'll stay together. Yeah. Also at the back of his head is very clear and knows for sure that all the social sanctioned support that a marriage might bring in is not available for this woman just now. He doesn't need any kind of a support. He's okay, because even today, the society will accept him just like how he is. 15 years ago also he was accepted like this. Today also he's accepted like this. He knows that the woman comes from a position of vulnerability. And that is the impetus that such men continue their aggression and continue to treat their women or the partner in a manner where the partner has never got that space of strength to either complain or to retaliate. And that is why families and neighbors are so important when these relationships come to the fore.
Right, and look at that picture, ladies and gentlemen, both of them, the picture, there, look at that picture. They look so much in love, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but when you're in love, you're actually sparkling. You look absolutely wonderful. You both look at that picture, both of them happy, the smiles showing that we are so happy being together. But Mimamsa, who's a clinical psychologist, is trying to understand what must have gone behind this gruesome act of violence, because it's a very important aspect that we are discussing. Mimamsa, the reason was suspicion. He suspected, this man, Vaishnav, suspected that Deva was cheating on him. They had repeated arguments about it. Even that day when they went to the sister's house, he said, they came back, we thought, everyone thought that they have now made up, but then once again they started arguing, and it is then that when it really, blew up, that he took the pressure cooker and beat her on her head repeatedly. Suspicion, another thing, very common reason, jealousy, suspicion, saying, and this despite the fact that I am using myself as an example for all the women. I mean, I come to live with you. I decide that I want to spend my life with you. Yes, I may have an affair, maybe someday, so can you. But the thing is to constantly live under suspicion. Whom are you dressing up for? Why are you smiling so much? At the party, you were dancing very close to him. Why were you having a drink with him? Where does this come from? It must come from a very insecure man, Mimamsa.
And like I said, that insecure attachment, not being able to develop a healthy relationship are some of the signs that we do look at in a relationship like such. And which is why I think it's very important that we start to sort of look at counseling and help when you recognize that you're in a relationship which has been on a very shaky ground. Trust is one of the basic aspects of a relationship. And if one is recognizing that my partner is having consistent suspicion on me for not enough evidence, then that is a sign that one needs to look at, that we both need to seek out for help. If the partner is not agreeing, both of you go and seek help with a marriage counselor, with a psychologist, because somewhere that would help a little more. Yes, family needs to come in and support needs to happen, but when we try and do this patch of work every now and then, we are missing out on something more. Because every time we can't just patch up something which has been brewing again and again, and which is why intervention is required. And over here, the intervention is required, because not only are we looking at insecurity, lack of trust, suspicion, but we are also looking aggression, and we are also looking at emotional dysregulation, which is at the same time a biological aspect also. So individuals who have issues with anger, where their aggressive outbursts tend to happen a lot more, and it can also be even at an impulse, extreme measures can happen, violation of laws can happen, there is emotional dysregulation that one is looking at, and over there psychological intervention is a must.
Dhananjay, the next time a woman who is living in a live-in relationship feels helpless, what's your advice to her? Go seek help from the...
Yes, you should. You just should not hesitate at all. You should go to the police. And I also want to highlight another aspect here, which is the perpetrator here did what he did. But hypothetically, would he have done this to her if he somehow thought that her parents or her brother would come back, hunt him down, and then shoot him dead? Less likely. And that also means that parents have to stand behind their daughter, no matter what the consequence. So it's important for people to stick together, and then perpetrators like these always pounce upon the small possibility that the girl in this case was more or less abandoned. Now, I'm just assuming. Perpetrators will feel more emboldened when they feel that the woman they go after is one that's been abandoned by her family, because less likely that this man would have done what he did if he knew in his heart and mind that he had a brother or someone who would come back, hunt this guy down, and then finish him off. So all I'm saying is that parents have a responsibility, and parents ought not to abandon their girls, no matter what. So, and the girl in this case is dead, but then there are other girls who are not dead, but then who are in fact undergoing abuse and trauma. And my suggestion to them would be to simply call off that relationship and to also complain to the police, so that the police would in fact deter that individual from going after other girls and abusing them and making life miserable for other girls. So if you are in a live-in relationship and you find your person to be abusive, walk out this very minute, and then the next minute go over to the police and complain. Please do not hesitate.
How wonderful, I've completely run out of time, but Brinda, tell me something. Bengaluru as a city, how easy it is for live-in couples or partners to not only live together, not only display that they are in a relationship, but also feel comfortable to go to the lawmakers if something goes wrong. Is it a friendly city that way?
I think it is, like you pointed out, much more friendly than other cities in India.
Yes.
But that isn't enough, because we are talking of safety as a feeling, a feeling that every human being, every citizen in the city and state confidently feels, has a right to feel. And for that, we have a lot to do. For now, I think we must tell our police, when a complaint or a call of this nature comes, do not worry whether they are married or not. Take the complaint, pass it on to support services, and any woman in any kind of trouble, do not be afraid, do not be ashamed, do not feel humiliated. Make the call. Your life is so much more important.
Brinda Dige, on that note, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Bava. Mimamsa, it was a sheer pleasure. Dhananjay, I wish we had more like you. Thank you so much. Thank you indeed. Time for a break, but I'm coming back with lots more. Two stories, one on cyberbullying and the other on superstar Rajinikanth. So get back to the South Indian.
He thought he could outlast us.